Here's the Premiership window. 16 of the last 18 premiers have been in that window. Top right-hand corner, top 6 for offence, top 6 for defence. And every single premier in the last 18 years has been above that line. That means top 6 for defence. So right now you've got 2 teams that are in it, and that's Port Adelaide. And for Coscardone, the Port Adelaide director, last year, every time he saw the window, Port Adelaide was sliding out of it. That would be great joy. They've attended to the fact they were 12 for points against last year. They've in this short period of time, it's an early snapshot, they and the Cats find themselves where you need to be.
Well, we understand that this is factored against your direct opponents, and you might have had an easier draw or a harder draw in the early stages, and it's going to make more sense as we go through the year. But already you can see, Port Adelaide and Geelong that are actually in that window. We thought Port Adelaide had to improve their defensive profile, and they have in the early stages, and Geelong just continue to surprise.
The surprise for me was the Bulldogs. How close they are to that window. So, they had a big win against West Coast. They got Gold Coast on a windy day down at Ballarat. So I was very surprised that they were close by because they're the team under the most pressure, especially after this week, Gaz.
And we'll talk about them. The other watch is Carlton. So they are where Port Adelaide ended up last year. Port Adelaide, remember, went on that massive winning streak through the middle of the year, but they were just going the wrong way. So that's very early days. That's a bit of a result of being scored against from clearance as well. So just a round 5 snapshot for the Wisp, and a few others have been caught.
And the reigning premiers at the moment are still a little low and left compared to where they were at the end of last year.
Plenty of work still to come. Righto, Brownie, what's your biggest question from the weekend?
Yeah, will the loss by Carlton haunt them? Come back to haunt them later on in the season, guys? And I think it will. I'm a bit concerned. So they weren't going as well as a 4 and zip team. I think they got lucky on occasion. Yes, there was some good management in games, but if you actually look at their tough stretch ahead. So let's have a look at these games. And, I know we can be sometimes reluctant at doing this because it's hard to predict, of course, but, geez, that's strong opposition. No doubt GWS and Geelong, obviously the top ladder. You think Collingwood at that stage would have bounced back. Melbourne's going to be strong once they get freshened up. And, of course, the Sydney Swans at the SCG, which is a huge challenge. But there's not only that, Gaz, but let's have a look at their double-up games still to play. And that's where I just think this loss will come back to haunt them. GWS twice, Geelong twice, Collingwood will be up and going, and Port Adelaide twice. So 3 of the top 4 teams there, they play twice again, and of course the reigning premier. So when you just have a look at this, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful. And I'm not saying the players are getting complacent, but I just think late in the game, last week when they were 16 points up, Gaz, they get down to 10 points through a late goal. If you actually have a look at this vision, I'm not sure where the senior players, where their mindset was. Now, you've got to be very careful because form is fleeting, and especially form late in games. So this is the thing. 16 points up, they lose. Next centre bounce, Nick Newman. He's playing in front of the most dangerous player out on the field. That's Josh Rachele, along with Isaac Rankin. Now, I would have thought he'd be playing a little bit more defensive. He's playing as if he was 10 goals up, not 10 points up. So we go to this. This leads to this stoppage. Now, George Hewitt is playing on Isaac Rankin, the other most dangerous player on the field. Still, nobody near him. Eventually, Blake Acres, the winger, has to come back and cover him, but it's too late. So that's a goal. Next stoppage. So they're back within a kick now. Hewitt, he has to pick up Sam Berry, who's free. He gets committed to the contest. Nick Newman's nowhere. They put him in front. So I'm just questioning the leadership of the Carlton players in these moments. And maybe they got a bit complacent, Gaz, because they've won so many close games of late, and we've lauded them for that. But I tell you what, you've got to be careful. And Michael Voss would be really disappointed.
Good vision.
That vision will come up in review, and the things that they are in control of. Adam Kingsley just spoke to Jared and Robbo about how difficult it is to arrest momentum when the opposition gets it. And when you like Adelaide, even though they were 0-4, we know that their best is pretty good. So if you're Carlton and you've got foot on throat, you can't afford to give them any wriggle room. They did give them the wriggle room and they took it.
Said last week she's an even competition, so undefeated Carlton, winless Adelaide Crows, and they came with an intent. There's no question about it. I mean, they committed aerially, which was really impressive. Warren was great in the air, he was throwing his body around. Michael Lanny joined in the piece as well, and from that point of view, you looked at it, and then we saw this from Nankervis. You got Harry McKay charging out up on a wing, and he gets there, puts his fist in. So straight away you go, well, there's a different mindset in here. And then you go, well, Matthew Nicks is still able to get through to a group because they've come here and they've committed like that. And then Matthew Nicks played his part by going, well, I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm not going to throw. And we had a little chat with him before the game. It was great. We had a really good and open chat. These are just, these have been well found and well spoken about, but you've got to take some courage and have Jake Soligo continues to impress. We know the other three have been great players for a long period of time, but Soligo's going to lead that group, I reckon, through the middle of the ground.
Well, the Jordan Dawson decision is instructive because it takes time for a coach to move off his pre-season plans because you want to give your players a chance to settle. Now, Adelaide have been better the last couple of weeks than they were the first couple. Yep. Soligo's coming off a broken preparation in pre-season, so he was sub in the opening round and then has built into the role that he'd probably been slated for. Moving the captain out of the midfield to get a little bit more legs in there in the form of Isaac Rankin. That's a big call. That doesn't happen like that. And it happened last week and it graduated to happen more often this week and has significant impact.
And I like it wasn't just throw you out of the midfield, throw you forward. He gave him a specific role at times, played on Mitch McGovern, didn't he?
Yep.
Almost a defensive forward, knowing full well McGovern's going to have to go with Dawson. You can't have him run around the forward half. So there was a plan behind it, Gaz.
One thing I thought that they improved on is last year they were one of the best attacking sides because they lowered their eyes and found the easy targets. They changed angles, but going inside 50 in particular. This was last week. Young Nankervis, I reckon last year they would have found a way just to pop that into space for Taylor Walker to have a shot from 45 metres. That was halfway through the first quarter. On the weekend, we saw this. Now, this is Rochelle, who played some more time up high as well, and then was able to lower his eyes and find Taylor Walker in exactly the same spot, and he finished. And this one from Jordan Dawson, one of the effects of having him as a high forward is he actually finds space further up the field, potentially 15 or 20 metres away from his defender who might be sagging off. And when you give a player like Jordan Dawson time and space, he was able to be more effective going inside 50.
Tex was enormous, back at it, fitter and stronger. I love this, and David King was down the boundary. He called this before it happened. He said, be aware of Blake Acres here, he gets forward. So watch young Cook here. This is just a young bloke early in his game. He just leaves him. I mean, Kingy knew what was going on, but Braden Cook didn't. He went to the goal square to protect the goal square. This is what I love most. Then he took him the other end. Akers goes to the goal square and protects the goal square.
It's a mirror image.
And Cook says, all right, well, let's see if I can get a piece out here. Cottrell probably should have paid more attention. I think it's a man in front of him.
That was smart play by Cook, though, Gaz.
Yeah, of course it was.
He could have just drawn to the goal square and followed his man there.
I loved it. And they took a step forward, albeit, we're a very week-to-week industry here. We know that.
It's one when you see young blokes, where you see them run, they're generally, that's where they're coached. So I think his role as a wingman was to get in behind that stoppage and to protect it, and he got exposed by Akers, maybe a high forward.
Big question.
Roll up for him.
Big question for you, Bucks.
Mine is should we be surprised about where the Bulldogs are at? Like, they've gone, they won a couple of games and they went into that game against Essendon expecting to win, and I think we thought if that game was played 10 times that they probably would have won 8 or 9, which is why we're surprised.
And I think they felt that internally.
But when we sit back and look at their list, are we absolutely surprised? Did you have them in the final 8?
No.
Did you have them in the final 8?
I had them on the edge, 8 or 9.
Yeah. So, and where do we have Essendon? No one had Essendon in at this point.
No.
So it was probably what we would have seen as a 50-50 game.
Well, are we surprised? I'll answer the question.
Well, I am. I am on that 1 week performance because I thought they'd actually put some form together, intercepts and pressure to actually show a little bit more. But this is the issue. They are on that. They should be ready to go.
Premiership window.
They should be contending, and the coach said as much early on about saying we believe that our best is going to be good enough in pre-season. But one of the things that I thought was instructive was when he was asked to deal with the selection decisions, and he said in his post-match, and tried to explain that in his post-match.
When I talk to our supporters, I talk to them about the possibilities, and even though we're evolving and there's some changes within personnel at different times, and where the players themselves have created an internal sort of pressure for spots, and that's all okay if you end up being a formidable team. Right now we're not. I'll always coach, and our coaches and our decision makers will always make the decisions for the now, but we need to make sure that, and this is part of the selection process as well, we give opportunities to young players that are going to be important players in the future as much as now. In no way, shape or form are we saying that we're doing it for next year and the year after or anything like that. It's absolutely for the now.
So, pressure for spots, opportunity for young players for the future, but then we're absolutely selecting for the now. So I felt like that was a confused message from the coach because he's trying to protect his players. Now, whether he's trying to protect, say Bramble v Daniel, whether he's trying to protect Bramble's performance or he doesn't want to say that Caleb Daniel is not in the side for A, B and C reasons, and then you put Baker, say Baker and Dale, same thing, protecting Baker, not wanting to criticise performance, but then not saying exactly why Dale's not being in his position that we were expecting him to be. So that's just a couple, and they might not be competing, but I think those matchups are fair enough. I think we weren't. He didn't want to take us entirely into it, but I think they're in between at the moment. Either the senior players aren't stepping up, and the young players aren't ready, and they've got to decide which way they're going to go. And it's mixed messages at the moment.
He must be cognizant of the fact that this would be affecting senior players, though, because they'd be thinking, hang on a minute, what's the coach doing? Are we in the Premiership winner? Are we making a tilt at this one, or are we rebuilding? Like, as senior players, you never want to be in a team that's doing that.
Well, listening to that answer with the overlay of Bontempelli as the pitcher, it just begs the question, where does he feel? Where does he feel?
What were they saying last week when they got done by 4 points against Geelong?
Well, they still looked all right then, didn't they?
We're just so week to week, we are.
We are.
We're week to week.
But are we seduced by the Western Bulldogs' top-end talent?
Not me.
Because
well,
yeah, but they've got four. Yeah, but English
tell me
was
who's the top-end talent?
Well, Bontempelli. English was All-Australian. Caleb Daniel and Bailey Dale have been All-Australians. Liberatore had a great year.
Ruckman for the All-Australian.
He was All-Australian.
He had a really good year, but there's 10 blokes competing for the spot.
Yeah, I know, but coming into the season, you look at the 5 or 6 A-graders, and you think, well, geez, they've got to be up there. They've got to be contending.
I'm giving you Bontempelli and I'm giving you Liberatore.
I'm giving you All-Australian. So Dale and Daniel, All-Australians recently.
Not
English, All-Australian last year.
Ugle Hagen.
So Ugle Hagen. Yeah. Norton with the capability of it.
No.
Well, Liam Jones hasn't been All-Australian, but he's been an elite defender at times. So
okay, well, I guess it depends on where you rank them and where you rated them. I mean, I think they're going to be battling and they'll be on the cusp, and if they're not, they're not.